I mean, how do you really get involved in this? Is this something that you did as a kid or something you picked up later in life and said, listen, no, I really want to donate a significant amount of time to my music?
Well, I just do it to stave off dementia.
Welcome back to Under Oath. Welcome back to Under Oath. Today I have the privilege of talking to comedian, actress, and musician Margaret Cho. Margaret, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Hi.
Hi. One of the first things I wanted to say is my assistant came in before this interview, and he's Asian American, and he said, I want you to know she inspired me. You know, growing up, we didn't have anybody who looked like me, sounded like me, and it allowed me to come out of the closet. It allowed me to do a lot of things. And I think you probably have a lot of stories like that where people have told you that.
Yeah, that's so wonderful. I'm so grateful for that. I think that's like my greatest achievement is to be visible for people who just didn't feel like they belonged. And so I'm really honored, for something like that. People have said that to me time and time again, and that's so meaningful. And I'm really happy about that.
You know, I love that when somebody does something that lifts other people up. It's a huge issue, and a lot of people don't understand that it's the same in comic books and anything else like that. If you don't see anybody who looks like you just feel like you're on the outside of everything.
Yeah, and so it's like such a validating thing to be able to like recognize that like, oh, you see yourself. And it's so meaningful now that there's so many also great Asian American comedians who are doing this because they saw me and they were inspired by what I was doing. So people like Ali Wong and Joel Kim Booster and Bowen Yang all really have said that I've inspired them to do what they do. And that is just for me like the greatest compliment.
You know, when I grew up, comedy albums for me were huge, whether it be Richard Pryor, Red Fox. You know, so many people were putting out such fantastic work. And it's a shame that a lot of kids nowadays don't grow up on albums. They have shorts. They go to the internet, they see like 10 seconds. They don't realize they don't get to see these hour and listen to these hour records over and over and over again. And you've put out a lot of albums and you actually have a new one out right now.
Yes, this album, it's called Lucky Gift. It's actually a music album, so it's my third music album. I've also made many, many comedy albums over the years, but this one is music. It's like I'm one of those comedians that do music. So that's like me, Steve Martin, Tim Heidecker, Mae Martin. Reggie Watts, we have sort of separate music careers, or Childish Gambino, just Donna Glover. So for me, it's like a very meaningful endeavor. But yeah, I also love comedy albums as well. I just listened to Arizona Bay, which is a great Bill Hicks record. Um, there's so many great comedy albums that I think are just so legendary. Also, Mitch Altogether, Mitch Hedberg's record is really meaningful to me. But yeah, I love them.
You know, when you have this other endeavor, for example, I'm an attorney, I get to do stand up comedy, I have my show, and people are always trying to say, hey, you know, pick a lane, stay and do what you do best. But when you love something and you just need to get it out there, I mean, how tough was it for you to get people to take you seriously as a musician?
Well, it's hard, but it doesn't matter either because I don't mind not being taken seriously as a musician because I'm a comedian. It's okay. But I just do it because I love it. I love it like when some artist does something else. Like I love when like William Shatner makes music. It's so good. Like I'm like everybody needs to listen to Leonard Nimoy's album or Christopher Lee makes legit awesome heavy metal music. So like for me, it's another avenue of the artist to enjoy. I love the deep cuts, so I just think it's really pleasurable, and I love to make music. And this record was really exciting for me to make, and I make music every day, so it's just really special to share it.
I mean, how do you really get involved in this? Is this something that you did as a kid or something you picked up later in life and said, listen, no, I really want to donate a significant amount of time to my music?
Well, I just do it to stave off dementia. Like I like learn music and play music and like I'm trying to just expand my brain and like get rid of all of the damage from like drug use over the years. So like for me it's just a a way to just keep my mind moving. But I started as a musician when I was 5. Like I was a singer in a band. It's like really little kid, and then I played piano, and then I sort of like let it fall away because I started doing comedy at 14, and that was my main focus. But I came back to music in my late 30s, and now just make music every day just as a hobby, but also a social like thing. A lot of my friends are musicians, so I play with them, and so for me, it's just special.
Now, I talk to a lot of actors and performers and athletes who've had issues with drugs in the past. And, it's hard to explain to people that the pressure cooker industry that you're in, that every second you're worried about how people feel about you and everything you're doing. I mean, how difficult was it for you? I mean, do you think that played any part of it and said, yeah, well, I was constantly being berated by people?
Yeah, but it's also like my tendency to want to just check out. Like I just have the addiction gene or whatever it is. So I always wanted that even before I was in entertainment. Like it has nothing to do really for me with the pressures. I mean, there is some pressure when it comes to working as an entertainer, and there is some like um, stuff that you want to get away from. But at the same time, some people are predisposed to addiction. I think I'm that. So I, you know, reflexively choose to like check out, which is, for me, really a negative thing. So, and I've been around sobriety also for a long time, but I have a really long time sober now. And to keep that, I'm very focused on mental health. So, yeah, meditation for me is very big, but music is also a big part of that because it is a kind of meditation as well.
What do you think the top thing you go to when something calls to you? Go, man, I'd really like to be doing this right now. I'd really want to drink. I'd really want something. What is the main thing you grab hold of to keep you from doing that?
Well, there's a lot of people that I'm in connection with that are also in their lives. They're trying to be sober, and so it's a multitude of people that I am in these recovery communities with, and I'm in therapy. I have a lot of support, but you can't do it alone. That's the main thing. Is the most important thing is that if you're struggling, it's really that's what happens when we're in isolation. So I have a huge community of people that I can tap when I need them, and I'm there for them when they need me, and that's what it's all about.
As a stand up comedian, also, I take a lot from my own life. I always, if something happens, I look over, my girlfriend will look over at me and go, please don't put that in your bed. I'm going, it's going in. You
Yeah,
know,
you have to.
there's nothing I could do. You did something so crazy that it's going in. I'm
You have
sorry.
to. You have to. And that like the people in your life have to be okay with that. That's the thing. It's like when you're friends or like your relationship with a comic, everything is material. There's nothing that is sacred at all. In fact, the more secretive, the more you're going to talk about it. So I think it's acceptable. Like I've found that to be like true with all the comics that I've been in relationship with. We just know like that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, you said something with the comics I've been in relationships with.
Yeah.
How many civilians weren't quite used to it?
Lots of civilians are not used to it, but then they get used to it. If they want to remain in your life, they get used to it. And it's actually like, okay, because if you're like kind to them, that's all that matters. Like you have to be empathetic to people that don't want to be talked about. But at the same time, they have to accept that it's going to happen.
I remember Richard Pryor, one of his last bits of comedy was about his drug use and how he was running down the street on fire. And it was killing us, but it was hysterical at the same time. And I find that sometimes the most painful thing in your life is the funniest thing you could talk about.
Right. It's very true. And I love Richard. I love that particular special. I think that special, it's like Live on the Sunset Strip, really, that album really defined the idea of it's okay to bring your pain to this, like to bring your pain to a comedy stage because it's so meaningful. And yeah, I feel like with that bit, Richard really changed what comedy became. He like brought comedy into a modern era, which is so powerful. But yeah, I love him, and it's so true what he did.
Now, comedians, there are some comedians who have really big egos and some that are always scared to death of what's going to happen on stage. When you finish a set or when you finish a concert, everyone's going, "You're the best I've ever seen. Unbelievable." I mean, do you take that well or you're like going, you just kind of nod?
Well, you take it, but you also take it knowing that you're going to have to do it again tomorrow or later that night, and you don't know what's going to happen. So the fact is, like, comedy is a really humbling career because you have to start from ground zero every time you do it. Like, there's no like leeway from the last show you did. You can't bring the glory from past experiences, no matter who you are. Even the greatest comedians in the world still have to, work it from the ground up. So it's very challenging, but I know that, like, I'm grateful for the fact that it is so humbling because you don't ever let it get out of hand. You don't ever let it blow your mind up, blow up your confidence to the point where you can't do anything. Like, it's a really like a working man's job. It's a very workhorse of entertainment kind of job.
When you first started doing comedy, there was like nobody out there who was out. I mean, the stuff that you did, and I'm going to say groundbreaking, and you're going to say, well, there are other people before me. But I remember the crap you used to take, and I was like going, wow, there's a certain, was it a need? Was it bravery? I mean, what would you even call it to say, listen, I'm going to put it out there?
Yeah. Well, thank you, but I just love it. I love the art form. For me, it's really gratifying, but it's also like this amazing puzzle that we're always going to be working on, that we're always going to be figuring out, like, what is the next joke? What is the next punchline? What is the next setup? Like, what is going to improve this? And that is the grand design of it that I'm always fascinated with. So I think it's definitely worth it. But yeah, it was harder before, but now it's a lot easier.
Now, as a lawyer, I get contracts all the time when I'm on the road, or somebody will give me a contract for a club, and it'll say what I can do and what I can't do. And I look at that, and I always think, does that bit? And I'm always thinking to myself, does that bit qualify? Does that bit qualify when I'm trying to go, wait a minute, I can't do this bit or I can't say this? I mean, I'm sure you've seen those contracts.
Mhm.
And what do you do when they just put it? Do you say, I'm not doing it. I don't care. Sue me.
Well, I mean, it's like sometimes you have to like adhere to them because of like the circumstance. Like, so like when I do a show in like Kuala Lumpur, which is a Malaysia's a Muslim country, so you have to be very conscious about what is actually the ideas that you are presenting, but then you can flirt with it too, like when you are directly addressing it and like approaching it in a playful way. There's something that magic happens. Like, your mind can actually wind around the restrictions to make fun of the restrictions in a really special way. So it's about skill, using those parameters that they're putting up and dancing around them. It's like jazz. Like, it's like, for me, it's a challenge that needs to be risen to. Like, I think that I can work with this. Like, I always like restriction because it makes me play around in a way that is really impressive, like, and exciting. So I don't look at that as being a negative. And I think it can be really good too if you've been doing this for a long time. It can break you out of a rut. So I like it.
Now, you've been on shows where, Asians have had a significant role in it. And then you've watched these shows kind of get watered down over time. How tough was it when you have writers who don't understand the community and they're just, writing, and suddenly your character could be played by anybody, whatever color?
Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard. I think also, like, when I was working in sitcoms in the 90s, that was just the norm. So you had a hard time sort of infusing your identity into stuff. But I think now the way that entertainment is, that we really long for much more specificity, and that is a kind of currency. So I feel like things are better.
When I get on stage sometimes, I look out in the audience and I realize what I'm doing might not be working at that time. Now, when you have a full set and everything's set, do you ever detour and go, "Okay, I got to get these people back. I don't know what's
Yeah.
going on tonight. It's just I'm going to throw out the best thing I've ever done in my life just to get them back on board."
Yeah, totally. Totally. But then I also have a hard time with like when I'm like rattled by like an unresponsive crowd, I'm kind of like sometimes I get mad, which is not the thing to do. Like I get angry about it. Like I want to like do what I'm prepared to do, but then it kind of goes really off the rails. But it's just another show. Like the thing about it is that you have to put it in perspective. Like you do like hundreds of shows a year. So it's just another one in that, but that feels really like a big deal in the moment. It doesn't need to feel that way after.
It was strange. I was headlining about 3 weeks ago in downtown Orlando, and my feature got mad at the audience because they were talking, and he just, he even hopped off the stage to go talk to somebody. And I was thinking to myself, dude, you really don't need to do this. There are
Hmm.
better ways to control the audience without having to do this. And, I know that happens a lot with hecklers. And now that people see all this stuff happening on the internet, they think they can be part of the show, and you have to explain to them it's not.
Right.
How do you deal with that?
I think you've got to do it in a playful way. The thing is that we can't forget that we're entertainers, and like you even have to entertain the hecklers. Like you have to at least find a way to bring it into the show, almost like single them out and like make it fun for everyone, and that's a skill that I've really not honed. I'm lucky that I have not had a great amount of hecklers, but some comedians do it so well. And it's tough though. Like it's really, really tough. But yeah, you want to be able to handle it yourself. You want to be able to shut it down quickly, but also be able to like integrate it into what's actually happening.
I was about a year ago. I got off stage and this guy came up to me and goes, "Man, I've been waiting forever to see you." I'm like, which was a ridiculous compliment. But he said to me, he goes, from I hear you on the radio, but when I expected somebody a little more Jewy.
What does that even
I,
mean?
w- it was so weird to me because I was like going, and I didn't quite know. I said, "Well, it happens." And it was just so bizarre. And I
What?
know that has had happened to you in the past where somebody has said something so crazy and you just kind of look at them and go, and you kind of like nod the racism off and go, "Okay, that
Yeah.
was
What do you
yeah."
even? Yeah. I mean, yeah, I've had things like that. Like, but it's also like, what do you even? Yeah, I don't even know what to do with that. Like, what do you even say? But yeah, people will say the most outrageous stuff because they're fans and they want to have like some input, I guess. But that's really ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of I go, let me just walk this one off and not talk about it ever
Yeah.
again. And I'd probably
Yeah.
mentioned it about 5 times now, but it's just so weird that people think that they can say anything to you because you're on stage and you're funny and all this other
Mhm.
stuff. They don't realize, stuff like that can be really mean.
Mean, but also like it all says more about them.
Yeah.
Like it says more about like their character of like what does that even mean? Like why would they say that they would say that to another person, but that actually seems like a valid like I don't even know. Is that it would be considered a critique? It's not a critique. What is that? I don't even know.
I don't know if it made it more funny. I'd probably try to be a little more Jewy. I just couldn't
Yeah.
figure it out at the time. I was just kind of like
Yeah.
nodding, going, "Well, I
Very
hope you enjoyed the
strange.
show." I just thought,
Yeah. I don't know.
yeah, racism and prejudice and everything else in comedy now is crazy because you have to be so concerned with what you're saying sometimes. And I think we're actually getting past that, where we're not worried about the joke as much.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like you want to punch up, punch up as opposed to punch down. So, in general, when we're talking about race and identity, that you want to have an understanding about, or if you're talking about race when it comes to you, then I think anything's fine. Like if you're speaking of your own race and thinking about that, that's totally important. I think that's really good. But when we're talking about other races, then the emphasis nowadays is to understand that we have to fold in everybody's experience and have empathy there. But yeah, to me, the trend is like punching up as opposed to punching down. So punching up in that like bucking the system, bucking the sort of authoritarianism, and lifting up whatever is below. So I think that is what I try to do in general. That's my focus or my goal.
Well, I'll tell you what, I know you're in Orlando on May 15th at the Plaza. I'm probably going to try to figure out how to make time for that because I've never
Please
seen you
come.
live, and I'd love
Yeah,
to
please
see that.
come. Really cool. I'm very excited about it.
Well, it was great talking to you, Margaret, and thank you. You've been an inspiration to a lot of comedians and a lot of people, and thank you for just being out there.
Thank you.